There's a belief that everything has a soul. So everything is alive. There's a battle that's going on, and it's really going to heat up, and it's between the devils and the angels. We, are in a state of either emergence or emergency. I met with a South African shaman who'd come to Montreal for an event, and so he had said to me, okay, we're going to open up and do a journey, and so let's call in your ancestors. I said, oh no, I don't do it like that. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, you cannot transcend this world if not through your ancestors, because they gave you life. And if you don't honor them first, you're dishonoring all of it.
This is Skin Talks, the podcast where we go deeper than skin, products, and trends and explore the conversations that actually matter in health, beauty, wellness, and confidence.
We're a mother-daughter duo and the founders of Boutique Skin Envie. After years inside the industry, we've learned that health is never just about what you use. It's about everything you digest, how you think, how you live, what you eat, how you move, what you put on your skin, and how you feel in your own body.
If you're looking for insight, honesty, and a fresh perspective on the future of health, beauty, and wellness, you're in the right place.
Let's get into it.
Skin Talks podcast by Boutique Skin Envie, hosted by Beate and Natascha.
Today, we're joined by Debra Must for a powerful and thought-provoking conversation. With a background in traditional healthcare, Debra shares her journey into shamanism and how it's transformed her understanding of healing. We explore the role of the soul and spirit, ancestral influences, and the deep connection between emotional, spiritual, and physical health. This episode invites you to look inward, reconnect with your essence, and expand your definition of what healing truly means. I hope this episode resonates with you. Welcome to the podcast, Debra Must. Debra, it's so nice to have you on today's episode. Before we get started into shamanism, I want to know a little bit more about your background. Where did you start off? How'd you end up in shamanism? Just give us sort of like a well-rounded little history on you.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be here. So I come from primarily a healthcare background. So for about 30 years, I worked in the healthcare system, but I always had an interest in metaphysics and shamanic practice and all things spiritual for years, like since I was very, very young. As long as I can remember, basically, I explored a lot of different modalities and spent a lot of time reading books and, checking out interesting metaphysical practitioners, things like that. And what I realized when I was in my healthcare profession was that there was a missing component. And basically that was the care of the soul, the spirit. So we're really good at looking after the physical body, and that's super important. And actually medicine is integral, of course, in helping us to establish, better health outcomes. And also, the mind. So we have a lot of, psychologists and excellent practitioners who help us with our emotional body. But what I realized was that there wasn't a lot available to understanding the soul or the spirit of the person. And so just for medical outcomes, it was something that really interested me because, you'd have two people with a similar disease and one would have a different outcome from another. And what was the difference? Was it just, their labs that were different? And for me, it was actually whether their light or their essence was different. Did they feel like they had a belonging to something greater than themselves, to community, to also even embodying, their own personal essence. So it was really something that I studied from a distance at first, and then became more and more involved in doing mindfulness work and different type of training programs for my company, just to really understand, the nature of the soul and how it plays into our overall wellness.
Yeah, that's something that is, I think, becoming more and more explored today. I find in the Western world. The Eastern world is very much in tune, I think, much more with that. But in our society today, it's newer, but it's, I think, becoming quite important and sought after.
Yeah, it took a few pioneers, that actually brought a lot of the Eastern practices to Western medicine and just to, Western culture. And not just Eastern practices, but, just the mindfulness, the awareness that we are much, much more than just this vessel. And that's taken us a little while to get our heads around, right? Because we've spent many generations thinking that we are, especially since colonization, that we are really just these physical beings that are just trying to get through day by day, paying our bills and just, showing up and sacrificing to get to that end goal of whatever that might be. But it doesn't fulfill us. And so I think we're realizing that there's something very important that's missing when we don't consider our soul care.
I love that.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's very important.
It is.
For sure.
It is hugely important.
So this is my first time ever really discussing shamanism and all of that. I mean, I've heard it through Beate before because she's spoken about it, but ultimately I have no idea what it is or what it means. So maybe we can start off with shamanism. Like, is there a meaning to the word? And maybe just diving a little bit into the history of it. What does it mean ultimately for somebody who's
brand new
like me?
It's it's a great question. So the word itself is actually a Siberian word, which means the one who knows or the wise one. And so when we look at the word itself, and just to explain today in our modern language, using the word shaman or calling oneself a shaman is starting to be somewhat uncomfortable for a lot of practitioners, only because there are different indigenous peoples who find it culturally appropriated. So we are changing the language around it for non-lineage shamans. So there are shamans who come from, generations of very wise, wisdom keepers who have gone through major initiations to actually be able to call themselves and show up for their community as shamans. So when someone who, was raised here in North America, who has an interest, and, I've studied many traditions, I spent a lot of time, doing research and allowing myself to sit with different practitioners and methodologies. But to call even myself a shaman doesn't really honor those who came before me, who really had to go through very difficult initiations to become that holder of wisdom in their communities. So we now refer ourselves to ourselves as shamanic practitioners or animists. So what animism means is that there's a belief that everything has a soul. So everything is alive. So you and I, of course, animals, birds, creepy crawlers, water, the land, trees, the sky, everything has life energy and is full of soul essence. And the lineage shamans taught us, and in their wisdom keeping, that when we're in right relationship with all of nature, that's when we're aligned. And so these practices go back tens of thousands of years. They are throughout the world known as, whether we look at the Americas or to, the African continent and East Asia, various places, these practices have been part of the culture for thousands of years. And only now are we in the Western world embracing them. And that's because they work. They've stood the test of time. And it's actually, in our humanness, our human nature, the need to feel this connection to each other, to community, to the earth, and to nature is what actually has us feeling well and aligned.
And how long have you been practicing this?
Well, for over 25 years.
And I admire you, Debra, because for somebody who comes from a healthcare background, which is more the traditional medicine, in a way, to be able to bring to shift their world from there to here, it's a massive undertaking, or like a massive shift, right?
It's more of an expansion, I think. I don't think I ever left the medical, the Western medical world. I had a few years ago, stepped out of that role, but I still honor and understand the benefits of it. But it's the expansion of it. It's just the missing piece of the puzzle in how I perceive it and how I've experienced it. And even actually, like the WHO has in recent years accepted and promoted, these types of, whether it's shamanic practice or whether it's Reiki or a therapeutic touch or
Meditation.
the more non-conventional, right? They've now encouraged people who are struggling with health and have realized that there are better health outcomes when people explore these types of practices that are not necessarily part of our Western medical structure.
I often think about, several years ago, really tapping into this whole world a little bit more than I did previously in my life. And I remember listening to a podcast with Gabor Mate, and really the power of emotion and the power of life experiences, and also, generational traumas and stuff like that. And, we know about fight, flight, or being stuck. And I thought it was, but freeze, sorry. But I always thought it was very interesting that he had this because he's a doctor, right? That he always was, when people would come to see him, his patients would come to see him, they weren't necessarily saying, okay, so, how long have you had this sore throat? And, let's put you on a medication for the sore throat. He would dive into their past.
Right.
And I think that the past, our life, our experiences in our life, they form and shape the way we think, the way we feel, but ultimately our health, right?
Yeah.
Our overall general health.
Absolutely. And, Gabor Mate, I just recently found out, is a Canadian psychologist.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize that until very recently. So, he's an amazing, very profound, very insightful guide in this type of medicine, so to speak. And really what he speaks of, and I think that is really something that's become a huge focus in today's shamanic practices, is the ancestral component as well, right? So how were we influenced by not only our childhood, but our ancestors.
Yeah.
So in ancestral medicine, as we call it in some of the circles that I belong to, it's literally understanding, what are we holding on to in our DNA? Where did it come from, right? We are, whether we want to admit this or not, we are very much a result of our ancestors. And whether we think that they're great or think that they're, horrible, doesn't matter. We are really a continuation of them. And so their DNA is very much alive in us. And so in understanding that, and I remember when I first started some shamanic practices years ago, I met with a South African shaman who'd come to Montreal for an event. And anyway, I had a private session with him, and he was asking me about, how I open up to journey. So there's something called shamanic journeying, where you literally are allowing yourself to experience a more expanded version of reality. And that's really the key to most shamanic practices, is that you're, kind of transcending this third dimensional reality and meeting in your ancestors or spirit guides or what have you in the world of spirit, or the unseen world. And so he had said to me, so, okay, we're going to open up and do a journey. And so let's call in your ancestors. And again, years ago, I said, oh no, I don't do it like that. And he said, what are you talking about? What do you mean you don't do it like that? I said, well, I call in my spirit guides and I call in the directions and, my power animals and all of that. And he was in absolute shock. And he said, you cannot transcend this world if not through your ancestors, because they gave you life. And if you don't honor them first, you're dishonoring all of it. And it really took me aback, because in core shamanism, which is what I, first learned, it wasn't really part of the practice. And we would drum and call in, our helping spirits and, allow ourselves to have these experiences. But it really made sense. I thought, well, I can understand that without them, we would not be here.
Yeah.
So just understanding that even though some of what we receive from them could be, trauma memories or, some types of disease that got transferred, hereditary things, they are the reason we have life. And so once we accept that and can make peace with that and transcend all of the negativity perhaps that we hold in our bodies because of what we perceived as trauma and was lived as trauma, I think, again, that's a very liberating thing for us to actually come closer to the health outcomes that we're looking for.
And so somebody who has never experienced any form of shamanic practices in any way, shape, or form, what does it look like? I mean, I know there's many different types of shamans around the world. You can go to Indonesia or to Peru or, different areas of the world, and it's all different, but they still have the same common denominator. What would somebody who here in North America, let's say, what could they expect from an experience like this? Or like, how could they get into it and know what to look for and what to expect from the experience, kind of, without having an expectation? I don't want it to be like that. Like, I'm going to go see a shaman and I'm going to be solved. But like, where's the beginning stages and what can they expect through the journey?
So I think what you said at the beginning is very important to note, is that depending on where the practice comes from. So, for example, you mentioned Peru. And for many people who've experienced Peruvian shamanism, a lot of it is based in plant medicine.
Yes.
So if you go to a Peruvian shaman, there will likely be a suggestion or, a ceremony of some sort where you would partake in some type of plant medicine. Now, a lot of the people who I know who practice Peruvian shamanism also, rather than just providing plant medicine, do a lot of breath work.
Yeah.
So using the breath as a way to transcend, and breath work is extremely powerful. And so there are other traditions who also use breath work, things like that, more and more are becoming accessible to people here as well. But I'm going to say for myself and for a lot of the people in my community, they, and myself included, practice something called core shamanism, which was, just to give you a synopsis, it was created by Michael Harner, who was he was doing his PhD. He was an anthropologist. Sorry, I couldn't think of that. He was an anthropologist who went to various parts of the world and studied the shamanic traditions of different tribes. And he was there, doing plant medicine and doing various types of hallucinogenics, but also, drumming practices and, rhythmic trance and, ecstatic dance, various things depending on the community that he visited. And so what he did, and this was in the 1960s, he wrote his thesis on the fact that all of these traditions, whether they're, in Indonesia or in an African country or somewhere in the jungles of the Amazon, have some very similar core practices. And they are, 5 or 6 practices, which is what I would say most Western shamanic practitioners such as myself are bringing forward, which are something called shamanic extraction or soul retrieval, animal totem retrieval, divination. So it's really connecting with spirit, being able to set up a situation where the person, or, we do it personally for ourselves or assisting others in doing the same thing, and having an experience where they are going to listen to some drumming music, perhaps, and have an experience of expanded awareness. And the practitioner is going to help to, what we call divination, is try to receive information from them, from the unseen world, from their ancestors, from the spirit guides that are within their auric field, and help them to receive what they're looking for in terms of alignment or returning to their divine essence. And ultimately, what I've come to understand understand over my years of practice is that we're all divine beings. We're all, in metaphysics, we call it God's spark, or, we talk about divine essence, but that's what we really are. And part of shamanic core shamanism is helping people just remember who they are. That's it. It's not a complicated practice. It's just remembering your divine essence and holding space for the person to remember their divine essence.
Interesting.
It is interesting. I love this stuff.
I know you do.
I do, because I we were having a conversation today at lunch, and you talked about breathwork therapy and stuff like that. And I've talked about it with Natasha and with other guests on the podcast before, but different types of therapies that we do in our lifetime that lead us to where we are in the present moment. And I know for myself, I did, psychology. I saw a psychologist, I saw a psychiatrist. I've done a lot of different things, including breathwork for over a month when I was in Bali, and all these different things. And a combination of all of it is what has helped me land to where I am today in my life. And had I only done one thing, where I have a high respect for psychologists and psychiatrists, for me, it's a very, it's based on science, how the brain operates. And, I don't know how to express it, but it's very...
It's the mind part, right?
It's the mind part. And it's sometimes I felt that there was like a justification that you are feeling this way because that's the way your brain works and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, but there's got to be more than that.
Yeah. So you needed something deeper than an explanation with that.
I didn't want to have just for me, it helped me to a certain point, and then it stopped. And I felt like the things that I've done beyond that, where it comes to really going into myself and understanding things that are different than just a scientific explanation, were way more powerful for me.
Yeah.
And I think life is a big, huge journey of learning. No end game or no destination particularly, but it's constant, right?
Yeah. And we tend to suffer from destination addiction as humans. We keep thinking that, there's somewhere that we need to be happy. Like, when I get to this point, I'm going to be happy. When, I arrive here, then that will be success.
Yeah.
But what we realize is that, and I think about like Olympic athletes who I've heard will, finally get that gold medal. And, it's very exhilarating and just the pinnacle of success. And yet, not long after they step off the podium, they're thinking about the next thing.
Yeah.
Right. So we're wired that way. It's how humans evolve.
Yeah.
And so it's being able to expand into those higher states of consciousness, I think really is something that allows us that, I'm okay. I don't need to go anywhere, be anything other than who I am, what I am, and just actually allow yourself to have a deeper connection to your inner world. And this is something that a lot of these spiritual practices allow us to do, is to, not focus simply on what we haven't attained, or, keep striving for some unknown goal that never really materializes in the way that we think it will, and just become more present and feel the beauty of actually being alive.
Yeah.
And what shamanic practice helps us do, especially when we connect with nature, that's a huge part of shamanism, is the fact that nature is one of the things that can actually calm the nervous system in a way that very few other things can, because it creates a sense of awe. And awe helps trauma. So when we want to feel better, if we're out in nature and we see a beautiful sunrise, or we witness, birds that are just frolicking, and, glints of snow on boughs of evergreens, we just feel this incredible awe. And it's as old as humans themselves, to feel rooted in these connections, to actually feel alive.
Yeah.
So
And
Yeah,
even feeling alive is also not just only the exhilaration of life, which is all the beauty. It's also the pains and the suffering that we have, because I think that's part of the human journey also, right? But we often try to escape the pain, which causes, other issues and other challenges. But, pain is part of joy in a way, if you can allow it to come into your life and go through kind of thing. And of course it's easy for me to say because pain is very personal and, there's a lot of different types, but I do find that the struggles are what lead to when you get through the struggles and you learn how to survive it, that's where you can find a lot of peace also at the same time. And through these,
and I think it's
sorry, go ahead.
The passing through it, right? That's, and I think because we're nature, we keep forgetting that. I think that in our modern world, we talk about how much we like nature and how much it's so important to be in nature. Like I said earlier,
beauty of it.
The beauty of nature. But for shamanic traditions, nature wasn't just scenery. It was relationship, right? It was being in relationship with nature. And when you talk about pain, you think about what the caterpillar goes through to become the butterfly, right? It has to go through the chrysalis stage. Mm-hmm. And in the chrysalis stage, scientists have actually done experiments where they try to remove the pain markers. And what happens is the caterpillar dies. So if we don't have that pain of transformation, we often, don't become that butterfly. So it's part of our growth. It's part of, how we signed up for this life is to learn through pain. And I'm kind of hoping that in a future version of ourselves, we're going to be learning lessons less through pain and more through presence and, higher consciousness. But it takes a while to evolve any species, and we're still in the throes of evolution.
We definitely are.
Let's talk about acne, because it's not just a skin problem, it's an emotional one. And the worst part, most acne products are either too gentle to work or so harsh they destroy your barrier. Zeo Skin Health's complexion clearing program finds the balance. It targets oil, bacteria, and inflammation at the root while protecting the barrier and supporting healing. It was designed by dermatologists, and we've seen it change people's confidence and not just their skin. If you tried anything else and still aren't clear, start here. Use code SkinTalks15 at beskinenvie.ca. That's BSKINENVIE.ca for 15% off your first order.
So how do you find that, for you, the importance of this shamanism and in the world that we're living in today in terms of our health? How important and how important is that, do you find? I know it's a big question, but we're living in a transitional time right now. I think we're living in a time right now that is very unique. Yes. And the connection to oneself and to one's own divinity and all that, especially in the world that we're living in now. How important do you think that is?
So in many circles, they're calling it the Great Awakening, right? So we're awakening. And a lot of people ask me, what does that even mean? We're awakening. What are we awakening to? And I believe we're awakening to a higher consciousness, right? We're remembering. Again, once we start to remember who we are, and I believe that we are truly love. We are really at the essence, the core essence of who we are. We are loving awareness, and we're using this physical aperture to have an experience. So the divine loving force is having an experience through us. And so when we're witnessing what's going on in the world and all these horrific things, I personally am very hopeful, and I have a belief that what we're seeing right now is just a flushing out of the shadows. So you talked earlier about Gabor Mate, and that's one of the things he honors a lot is understanding the shadow self, right? So in shamanic traditions, especially the Aztec and Toltec shamanic traditions, they say that we have 4 demons in the underworld, or so 4 demons in our subconscious, and they are fear, laziness or apathy, repetitive destructive behavior, and addiction to suffering. And they say that all 4 exist in all humans, right? Just to varying degrees. So when we're seeing what's happening right now at a global level, it actually is a reflection of what's happening within the individual, right? So there's so much fear and there's so much kind of apathy. Like we're watching these things and going, oh, that's a horrible thing, but what are we doing about it, right? Are we actually advocating for change, or are we just like sitting watching it on our screens and going, oh, that's a horrendous thing that's happening to these people? And so, it's like triggering us to be more involved and active. How are you going to help these situations? Are you going to show up? Are you going to volunteer? Are you going to, in some way be part of the change for the better, which I think is where we're headed. But anyway, all that to say, it's, to me, what I think is happening right now is that the shadows are all coming to light. And last year, there's an amazing shamanic practitioner. I would actually call him a shaman. He's from a lineage. His name is Alberto Villaldo, and he has a society called the Four Winds Society. So he's worth looking up. So okay. Alberto Villaldo. And he said that he was contacted. He's an Andean shamanic practitioner. And he said that the elders in the Andean mountains had contacted him late last year and said, "Are you ready?" And he said, "Ready for what?" And they said, "Well, And he's like, "No, I don't know." And they said, "Well, there's a battle that's going on and it's really going to heat up, and it's between the devils and the angels." Right. And so it's all the goodness and all the darkness, and that we are in a state of either emergence or emergency, and we get to choose. If we want to live in a state of emergency and think the whole world is falling apart and it's, terrible, and we can find lots of support. If we look for that,
yes,
we will
exactly.
find, right? Because, look at any news story and it seems that we are in a state of emergency. But then these very wise shamans were saying, or you could live in a state of emergence. And if we decide to live in a state of emergence, it's to shed that old skin. And it's interesting, the timing too, because we're moving from, in Chinese, the Chinese astrology, we're moving from the snake to the fire horse next. The 17th, I think it is.
That is,
and so it's like shedding that skin of the old and moving into the new. And the fire horses, could be about destruction, but to me, it's the destruction of the old and the birthing of something new. And so it's really perspective. And I believe that if we all focus our energy on emergence and really coming together, and I come from an Estonian background, so both of my parents are Estonian, and
that's funny, Debra. So my father's side of the family is Estonian. Also, I didn't know that about you.
Yes. Yeah. And so in Estonia, we had something called the Singing Revolution, and there's a fantastic documentary on it. But what people did is they sang their way out of the communist regime that had, really strangled the country for decades. But they literally were able to sing their way out. So peaceful demonstration is actually a very powerful thing. So yeah, to just answer that question, I think that we need to focus on being in emergence.
So can you describe what emergence is? Like for somebody who's listening that doesn't quite understand that, what would explain that?
Yeah, and I think it's birthing a new world, right? It's emerging into our higher self. So, those shadows that I talked about, those fears, it's not to say overlook them, but accept them. Say, okay, they're there, but they don't have to rule my world, right? Or my addiction to suffering. And it's so funny because very often when I learned about this, I would say, oh yeah, that person's addicted to suffering. I can see that in them. Or, this person. And then I had to literally turn the mirror and say, okay, where am I addicted to suffering?
Yeah.
What's my suffering story? So not projecting and trying to see it in everyone else, but where does it live in me? And when we can be very honest with ourselves and say, yeah, this is my suffering story. How do I emerge from that story? It's just a story.
Yeah.
We are stories. It's all storytelling, right? And so how do we emerge from these old stories and allow ourselves to birth something new? And, sometimes it's just little steps. It's being more present. It's not falling into the old patterns. Sometimes we are very stuck in patterns. And so it's a very slippery slope. But to just be more aware, to say no to that old pattern and to be more present for something that
to
can
be
come.
conscious, though, to be conscious that you're in that loop, you're in that, and we all go through it. And I think sometimes it captures us because we're fatigued. We're, have a lot going on, and there's just a lot going on. Like we talked about what's going on in the world a little bit and touched on it, but I just want to go back to that because I've been saying that for a little bit, that I notice the world is there's a lot of division and things that are happening, but I find that there's more and more people, what we see here in North America, that are stepping up into the love side of things. It sounds crazy, but just what happened at the Super Bowl with Bad Bunny, I don't know if you saw it, but
fabulous.
and it was through singing. So you just said that before, so people like that stepping up and having a presence in our world are influencing and giving hope, I think, to people that are stuck in darkness, because it can be quite consuming.
Of course it can. And if you don't have support, or if you've experienced a lot of trauma, or, you're living in poverty, there are so many variables, and it's easy to say like, okay, just like emerge, don't get stuck in emergency. It's just having compassion and understanding that if there is some awareness to, it doesn't have to be this way. How do you not judge, have compassion for people, even though, yes, they're creating a divide, or you might not agree with, how they see things, but rather than continue to create more of a divide, just understand that there's perhaps some information that's lacking, or there's love that's lacking. There's something that's missing.
There's something underlying in all of it. So somebody who, again, we go back to shamanism, which is the shaman's perspective on like wellness and connecting with oneself and divinity and the soul. What is the process? Like, let's say, for example, I know people that have gone to Peru and have done plant medicines, but let's say we don't have that option and you want to get into it here in Montreal, where we are. Is it one session? Do you need to do an accumulation of many different sessions? Is it something you can do by yourself, or do you need the expertise? And I think that people sometimes want to have quick fixes, right?
Yeah.
What is realistic around all of this if you incorporate this into your life?
Right. That's a really good question. So I'm going to say that there's a lot available. And like you said earlier, it's also, just being discerning what is, kind of true to you and in alignment with you. Because if someone tells you they have a quick fix for you, I would be very concerned. So healing, right? As we know, it's not a switch. It's literally an evolution. And so it's understanding sometimes the root causes of something. It's understanding, what are some of the traumas that a person's holding on to. And so when we talk about traumas, I don't want to talk about it from a psychological perspective, because shamanic practitioners really aren't people who will deal with the psychological aspect of trauma, but it's how it affects the soul, how it affects the spirit, how it affects the energy body, right? So really, just to answer your question, I think one would start by getting some basic information as to what shamanism is, because it's not a religious belief system. It's literally an experiential practice. So it's really feeling what it feels like to be in a space where perhaps you have a rhythmic beat, so drums. Or
why
now
the
there's a
drums,
lot
though, Debra? Why the drums in shamanism? Like, why is that important?
Interestingly, there's a real reason. So when I first learned how to journey, so journeying is like a meditation, but it's actually more of an active meditation.
You travel.
And so it's you're traveling. You're going to the upper world, the lower world. These are the worlds of shamanism. So it's not like heaven and hell. It's literally like, if you were to think of a tree, it's like we're in the middle world, which is the trunk of the tree. The lower world are the roots of the tree, and the upper world are the branches. And so each part has its importance. You need all three, right? But we learn how to journey to the various worlds using a rhythmic beat, so drums. And so why drums? Firstly, the drum is the first instrument that humans ever heard. So we had drumming back tens of thousands of years. It was one of the first instruments. So humans, we have a cellular memory of drumming. We also understand that it's the sound of our mother's heartbeat, right? So it's that consistent beat, and it's how we came into this world. And scientists have discovered that drum beat, consistent beat, so not just drums, but metronomes, things that have a consistent beat, will have us shift consciousness. So we'll go into the theta state of our consciousness, which is a more expanded, more creative part of our brain. So there are multiple reasons, and it's really a way to, not necessarily have to do plant medicine or any kind of hallucinogenics or, ecstatic dance or things that will also alter our states of awareness, but to do it in a more practical, accessible way here.
So but to let go, to be able to allow yourself to go into that theta zone, or to be able to travel, or to be able to allow this journey that you go through the shaman experience, whether it be through plant therapy or alternatives, how do we let go to be able to let that? Because I find, for myself, when I do those types of things, sometimes it's like I can feel things happening to me, but then my brain is going, okay, so what's happening now? Like how does one let go and go into that more freely? Is it a practice? Is it something that takes time?
Absolutely. It's a practice.
Okay.
And usually it's helpful to have a methodology. So in core shamanism, like I discussed before, when I first learned, it was from a shamanic teacher who explained the methodology of it. You do it like this. We're going to play the drums, you're going to do this, and then you're going to do that, and then the next thing. And it actually is a very important way to learn to have the methodologies. Like some people can just spontaneously have an experience of journeying, and that's also very human, right? We can have spontaneous experiences that take us into all kinds of situations, astral traveling and things like that. But if you want to have a core shamanic experience, there's a methodology that you use, but it takes a while before. It's like anything. Your subconscious is not used to it.
Yeah.
So you're going to have resistance. It's going to be, I've never done this before. So what are we doing? Is it safe? Why are we doing this? Right? Your mind is going to start resisting.
Rationalizing and resisting, I find,
Absolutely. And that's perfect. And so you tell your mind, thank you. I appreciate you. I've got this.
Yeah.
So why don't you, mind, hold this portal open for me while I go explore something? And you can kind of trick your mind, giving your mind a job, because the mind wants to do something. It's constantly chattering, right? We talk about the monkey mind in Buddhism, and it's literally like constantly telling us this is safe, this is not safe, this is good, this is bad. So once, we allow ourselves to control that mind and say, okay, hang on now, you've got a job. You're going to hold this door open for me while I go down or up or what have you. It takes a little practice, but after a while you start to realize, oh, I just had an experience and this was not my imagination. You start to see the difference. And then at first you think it's my imagination, and that's okay too. There's a wonderful quote that I love by, I think it was Joan of Arc, who said, how else would God speak to us if not through our imagination? And I think of that often because that is our creative mind, right? So we sometimes start to use our creative mind to get to where we want to go, and then we just allow the experience. So it takes a little while, and not always for everyone. Some people are very natural, but the average person will have some resistance. You just need to work through it. It's like yoga,
or meditation for that, quieting the mind. They always say, oh, quiet your mind. It's like, how do I quiet my mind? And through practice, it's the practice of, and when you do have the thoughts, to witness the thoughts and let them go. But you have to practice it, be committed to it somehow.
And I've learned you've got to give your mind a job. So if I tell my mind, watch my breath. Okay, mind, it's distracting with all kinds of thoughts. I'll say, hey, mind, watch my breath. watch my breath. And as long as it is engaged, it kind of allows you to get beyond it. So there are little tricks that one can learn. So yeah, I would say for anyone wanting to discover it, I would learn a bit more about it. Just there's so much information available, books and articles and YouTube videos, and online you can find a lot of stuff. There's some fantastic teachers online too, really solid, well-known experts that offer, kind of mini courses. But what I found the difference is actually doing things live. So I'm part of a shamanic foundation, and there's many trainings that I've done over the years, and we do them live. So I used to go to Almont in Ontario, but that teacher's retired. But literally having a small circle, like 15 or 20 people, having that human connection makes all the difference. And so, you practice your journeying, and, you have validation from other people that this was a real experience. It takes it to a new level.
100%. So I find it so interesting, and it's just a piece of the puzzle, right? Of life and getting through things in a different way. But I really wanted to talk about this because I've experienced it personally. I told you before that I've done very, traditional forms of therapy, but I've also done lots of alternative therapies as well. I've never done plant medicine therapy. It's something that I would love to do, but just, for me to go to Peru right now, it's just not, it's not in the cards.
It's becoming more accessible here as well.
It is.
So,
that's the thing. That's the thing. I'll have to talk to you about that after, because I would love to learn a little bit more about that. But I can say for myself personally, it's a big piece of my healing journey. That's why we wanted to bring light to it, especially in today's world, the way things are today. We know it helps to bring, I don't like to say hope, because hope can be like fuzzy, but it helps to give some light, let's say, on some things that people can do to help them get through things that they're experiencing in their life. And, could be trauma, or could be past trauma, or present trauma, but it is a big piece of the puzzle, I find, and super helpful.
Yeah, it's like what's lurking in the shadows, right?
Yeah.
What's lurking in the shadows. And it's not always easy to, on our own, just bring light. We sometimes need other tools, and plant medicine is a wonderful way
when
to...
you couple that with other things, like I think it was FTT therapy or RTT therapy. I think that's also something.
RTT,
it's all pieces that you bring in, and it can help to really transform the way you live your life.
Well, that's it, because we're multidimensional.
Yeah.
We are. We have, like I said before, the soul, the mind, the body. It's obvious that if we want to really explore all of the parts of us, we need to explore in ways that allow us access, right? So how do we get access to our soul?
Yeah.
How do we get access to our spirit? It's not something that we've been taught to do. It's not something that, in class we learned about. And so now it's, okay, we were realizing the importance of it for our wellness and our well-being. But now how do we do that? And so shamanic practice is a way to do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. Okay, so I wanted to, whenever we do an episode, we always ask a couple questions towards the end of the episode, just to, it's called our signature rapid fire. So the first question I wanted to ask you is, what is one thing you wish more people understood about spiritual health?
That it is absolutely going to go hand in hand with physical health and emotional health. It is one and the same.
Okay, interesting. The second question is, what is one simple daily practice that can support the soul?
Go outside without your phone for 10 minutes.
Oh my God, the phone, eh?
Yeah.
The phone has got us
it's
so
like
hooked.
It's an extension of us, right? So literally outside, or even just, 5 minutes of breathing without your phone, without any distraction, light a candle intentionally. Just do something that's for your soul.
Yeah, without distraction.
Without distraction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the third question is, what does feeling good in your own skin truly mean to you?
I think it's inhabiting my body in a way that allows my divine essence to flow through me. So to be in my own skin is really not, performing or trying to strive to be something or someone else. It's literally just coming back into alignment with myself and feeling really good with my inner world so that my outer world will shine as well.
Yeah, that's the way you shine for sure. Definitely.
Yeah.
I love this so much, Debra. Thank you so much for joining us today. Tashi had to do a little, she had a moment with Maximilian there. She left the room, but on behalf of both of us, we do want to thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Skin Talks.
If this episode inspired you, taught you something new, or just made you feel seen, please share with someone you love. And if you believe in thoughtful and empowering conversations that help you make better choices for yourself around your beauty and wellness, please rate and review the show. It helps us to grow our community, and we deeply appreciate it. Because this isn't just about skin.
It's about claiming your beauty, feeling strong, informed, and at home in yourself.
See you next week.